Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Cathedra webinar. We're coming to you live on December 16th, 2025. Our Cathedra webinars get their name from the Creek word for learning, and today you're going to be learning about conducting effective performance reviews from your instructor, Dr. William R. Latchford, who is president of the Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled that you could tune in for the webinar with us today. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. If you missed any of the other courses along the way that Will has done in the series, you can find that in the courses section, as well as finding the recording tomorrow. And if you opt to join for any of the future sessions, you'll log in and join by clicking on the green banner, just like you did today. We ask that you join with listen-only capabilities because we are recording, and it helps to cut down on audio feedback. And if you find that your sound is coming out of the wrong device, maybe you're trying to use your headphones or a Bluetooth speaker, whatever the case may be, if you come down to the bottom of your screen, you might have a headset icon or I have a phone icon. But either way, if you click on that, it'll bring up a list of your speaker devices and you can select the right audio output. Even though we ask you to join on mute, we do still welcome your participation. We want to hear your questions and your comments, any tech support issues that I can possibly help you navigate through. We're going to primarily rely on the public chat for that. If you don't yet have it expanded, you can come over to the messages panel and click on public chat. That'll open a chat between you, the instructor, the NLC staff, as well as the rest of the attendees. Anything you want to say, you can just come down here to the box that says send message to public chat, type what you'd like to say, and you can hit enter, or you can click on the little paper airplane, and that will send your message in where we can see it. If you think we missed you along the way, you can always use the hand raise feature that's down at the bottom right of your screen. And then we also have a list of important links for you in the shared notes section. I did already put a link to today's slides in the public chat for you for easy access. And then if you did join with your mic on, not a problem. You can always just mute yourself if you notice that it's not muted down here at the bottom next to the telephone icon. We'd love if you guys got the chat box going for us to introduce yourselves. You could let us know what your name is, where you're tuning in from. It's great to see all the different tribal nations that are represented, your work or your role in Indian country that probably led you to the webinar today, and then your tribal affiliation if you have one. You might just be a tribal employee and you don't have your own affiliation. That's okay too. You are still welcome. And then while you guys are introducing yourselves in the chat, I just have one final note to try not to click on that red menu panel that's all the way to the left of your screen. You might just have the icons if you don't have it expanded with the letters like I do. But just know if you click on that, it's going to pull you out of the webinar and take you to whatever you selected on the menu. You can always rejoin by just clicking on that green banner once again. All right, y'all. While you're introducing yourselves in the chat, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor, Dr. William R. Latchford. And Will, I have made you presenter now.
All right. Thank you, Brooke. Good afternoon, everybody. Glad that you were able to join us today on this great December Tuesday. I hope you and your families are well and prepared for the holidays to come. Today, we're going to have a great 90 minutes. We'll talk a little bit about performance reviews, and hopefully you'll be able to take a couple of nuggets away from today to just develop yourself and maybe your team to be a little bit better every day as we go along with performance reviews. So this course is one of many, actually one of 16 that Native Learning Center has graciously put together for us so we can continue the growth of leadership for tribal housing. So through leadership, strategic growth, and innovation, this website series, again, this is one of 16. For the next 8 months, we'll be hosting several other websites that are all related to leadership and how you can improve in your leadership journey. So we're excited about the next 8 months that can provide you with a little bit better opportunity so you can do your your job better. You can be a better leader. You can prepare yourself for the future and your future goals and objectives. Here's a schedule that over the next 8 months, again, you can, this is on the link, so you can kind of go through and see, kind of cherry pick which ones that you may think you need a little bit more help in, or you just want a refresher in, or you can attend all of them. And we appreciate and we're honored for you to be on with us today as we navigate effective performance reviews. So as we conduct effective performance reviews, what we always want to keep in mind is really what's the purpose of them? What's the purpose of the performance reviews? And we live in this environment sometimes where it just becomes a task for us. So today, what I would ask you is kind of start changing that philosophy, if you have that philosophy, and get rid of it's just a task. Get rid of having the opportunity just to do this once a year, or when tribal HR says, hey, you need your performance reviews in for your employees, because there's a bigger picture, and we all sometimes get caught up in the crisis of our everyday workload, and performance reviews actually, if we do them right, can be very beneficial for us as we navigate our work environment. And it actually complements our mission to the community that we serve. So as we navigate today, just self-reflect with yourself and see if you at one point or another have been in a position or had the philosophy that it's just a checkbox to do a performance review for your staff. We're all guilty of it sometimes or another through our career. That nasty behavior catches us, right? So I've been in that position where I'm scrambling to get the performance reviews in at the last minute, and it's something we don't want to be in that position. So if you have that philosophy, or if you're in that rut of just doing performance reviews just because somebody's telling you they have to be done, give yourself the opportunity to really understand the foundation reason, and be open to the mindset that these could help you in the long term. It could help you be successful as a manager or a leader, but more importantly, it's going to help you develop your staff. And we'll go over that here in a little bit more. A little bit about myself. My name is Will Latchford. I'm a 32-year veteran of public safety and leadership. I have my doctorate in criminology. About 32 years ago, the Seminole Tribe of Florida was gracious enough to provide me an opportunity to become a police officer with their tribe. And over the 32 years, I've had the opportunity to not only develop myself, but more importantly, develop in a profession outside of public safety when it comes to leadership, and help the tribe and contribute to making a difference in a community that is very prideful, very humble. And it provided me the opportunity to be able to sit here today and talk to you a little bit about what I've learned over my career, and what I've learned and I continue to learn as we navigate our leadership journey, that performance reviews are an intricate part of everything we do every day. So throughout my career, as you see on this slide here, I've been involved in a lot of dynamic trainings, and I have a good educational background. But that doesn't do anything. That doesn't represent who I am. What represents who I am is how I take this information and how I apply it every day in the work environment that I am, and to the staff that I supervise. So I'm honored to be your instructor here today. I'm currently the president of Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. I'm also the co-director of Florida State University's Native American Crime and Justice Policy Institute. After I retired a couple of years ago, I really had the mission to just give back. And that's what we're doing here today. And through my leadership journey is just to give back and take that knowledge that I was able to provide, or able to learn from others, to provide to you today and as we go through this series. A little bit about Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. It's a certified small business association, Seminole Native-owned, woman-owned business. Amy Latchford is the owner of the business, and her whole mission for this organization is to give back to tribal communities, tribal businesses, anybody who needs enhancement in everything that they do in regards to developing people. The organization has consultants throughout the United States and including Canada that we do training. We go out, develop those partnerships. If those partnerships aren't there, we develop those partnerships with other organizations to just assist and enhance a tribe. Our job is not to tell people what to do. It's to go out and encourage and enhance where an organization is at and build them up to where they need to be so they can reach their full potential. So we're excited about the path that we've been on, the individuals that we were able to so far to this point over the last 3 years to assist in their walk, and we look forward to the future. As we go through training today, this is a slide I always put in my presentation regardless if it's on webinar or in person. Your policies and procedures are important. They're written and they're trained on for a reason. And we all go to these trainings throughout our career. And what I've learned over sometimes we go to training and then we go back to our organizations and we have this conflict. How does our organization deal with these issues? And the training says we're supposed to do it this way. So today you shouldn't necessarily hear any contradiction, but if I do say something that is contradiction to what your current policy is, my recommendation and what I push you to do is go back to your bosses, sit down, have a discussion. There isn't one square, one peg that works when it comes to leadership. Your environment is very important, so please make sure you have those discussions. If you do have that conflict, follow your policy, and if your policy needs to change, there's nothing wrong with that. Policies should always be looked at, should always be driven to success for the community that you serve. And if you need to change a policy, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you do have that conflict, please just don't go back and say we're doing things wrong. Talk about it with your bosses, talk about it with your staff, see how you can do your job better and maybe where you can enhance your policy. So today's course, we're going to go over performance reviews, and they're essential for employee development. We're going to review outcomes that should be predictable but not surprising. We're going to discuss goal settings that create focus for employees and supervisors. We're going to talk about regular feedback that promotes continuous growth. Feedback is so important for your employees, and sometimes as leaders, we're in such a crisis and we have a lot of things on our plate that our feedback is kind of dialed back a little bit, and we may not see it until it blows up, but the lack of communication that we may have or that lack of feedback we may have on our employees then kind of stifles that growth for them. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. Learning objectives, we want to recognize the importance of structured performance reviews. We want to learn to set meaningful performance standards with our employees. We want to develop essential feedback and communication skills as we navigate the conducting effective performance reviews. We want to try and master effective interview techniques. That's so important when it comes to performance reviews. And lastly, ensure reviews are legally defensible, right? A lot of times we don't want to be in the jargon of the legal beagle, but at the same point, we have to understand that what we do every day, there is a legal consequence to it. When we're dealing with employees, we're dealing with service to the community. And sometimes liability plays a factor on that. So we're going to just kind of hit the 100,000-foot level of the legal defensible reviews so you understand where that plays into your performance review process. I want to start with this principle, and it's the growth principle that I think is so important through your journey when it comes to effective performance reviews. And Johann Wolfgang van Goethe, he came up with this quote, and his wisdom is to treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of being. So let me repeat that. Treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of being. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So a lot of times when we look at performance reviews, we just look at it as a checkbox. It's something we have to do. The employees develop this mentality, and we want to break that cycle. We have a question. Patricia Correz, do you have a question? All right, if you can put your question in the chat box, I'll go ahead and answer them as I go through the process here. I appreciate your feedback. So as we look at this principle, it reminds us that leadership is not about managing people as they are in the moment, right? Or as they show up to work today. That's not about leadership. It's about helping them become what they're capable of being. Philosophy alone it's not enough as we navigate our leadership responsibilities when it comes to performance review. We just can't have the philosophy that we're going to do great performance reviews. We have to put that into action. And in a tribal housing authority setting, especially with all the requirements you have through HUD and NAHASDA, that environment's difficult. And as you have those environments, we have to translate that mindset into a clear, consistent, and defensible leadership practices when we conduct our performance reviews. One of the most powerful places that happens in performance reviews is the entire process of effective performance reviews. Let me repeat that. One of the most powerful places that happens is the performance review process. It's so important that we kind of embrace that. And I know everybody on this webinar and everybody in your programs, they do a great job for the communities they serve, no doubt. And sometimes us as employees, we have hiccups. But the reality is performance reviews should be looked at as a time where we can develop our employees. We can provide them excellent feedback as we navigate the environment, and brings us together to really understand the entire concepts of what we're supposed to do for the tribe and the programs that we serve. In a tribal housing authority, when performance reviews are done right, they are the most powerful leadership tool that we can have as leaders. When they're done right, they're the most powerful leadership tool that we can have. When they're done poor, they damage morale. They damage the trust, not only internally, but externally. They damage consistency as our program is delivering that service to the community. And they damage the compliance faster than almost anything else a supervisor has to deal with. Now, take a moment and think about this for a second. Most of us can remember a performance review that we dread. I can sit here and tell you I can think of a couple throughout my career that I just dread, and I still have them in my head. One that the supervisor or even myself as a leader, I did it rushed, or the supervisor rushed through it just to get it done and say, listen, it's at the end of the year. If we don't get it through by December 15th, the employees aren't going to get paid. They're not going to get their equity adjustment if you don't get the performance review in. One that felt one-sided, right? You either are the employee or you're the leader, and the performance review is all just one-sided. There's no growth. It just talks about everything that we're doing bad, or even worse, one that completely catches you off guard. We've all been in those positions. And if we're being honest, as supervisors and managers, many of us, we may have had training when it comes to performance reviews, but we haven't been necessarily trained to lead through those bad times. And unfortunately, those bad times carry through with employees, because one bad performance review experience, that kind of carries over regardless of who the boss is. That carries over to the next boss and the next boss. And then it becomes a thought process, and it becomes the normal pattern for an employee to have the thought process on a performance review that they're always negative, they're always rushed, they're one-sided, or they're completely way off. So today, as we go through this training, I just want you to think about changing that mentality if it's in your environment. It's very important to your success. It's important to the success of your employees. It's important to the success of your program and the community that you serve. Every performance review in tribal housing doesn't just evaluate bad behavior or past behavior, right? They shape the future performance, and they protect the organization. That's the mindset that you should have is they shape future behavior for your employees. They shape the environment so it protects that great level of service that you provide to the community. They shape the protection that you may need one day when it comes to some issues that you're dealing with. They clarify expectations tied to job duties and compliance. They build accountability and consistency across your program. They strengthen trust between leadership and staff. And when they're done consistently and correctly, they create teams that are more engaged, more confident, more aligned with the mission of housing and being stable for your community. Here's the reality. Your employees are already evaluating leadership. Every day your employees come in, they're evaluating you as a leader. They may not tell you that, but that is what happens with employees. They come in every day. You're their boss. You're somebody that can impact them positively or negatively. However, they're evaluating you every single day. They're asking themselves, does my supervisor really see the work that I do? Take a minute, and I've been around the country training, and I've run into individuals who say, my boss doesn't see the work that I do. They don't understand all the hours that I put in and all the hard work that I do, right? That's the mentality that some employees get because of the way their supervisors are conducting performance reviews, because it doesn't reflect actually what the employee is doing. The employees are asking themselves, do I understand what compliance looks like in my role? Do I know what success actually looks like? If you had to think to yourself right now and think about the people that work for you, and you ask the question, does your people that work for you understand what success looks like? Would they be able to describe that to you? Would they be able to articulate what success looks like in your environment? And I would venture to say a lot of the individuals, not through any malicious activity, but they'd have a hard time describing that, right? And that's where you want to take them away from. You want them to be able to describe what success really looks like in the environment, in your program, and in them as individuals. So they have a path, they have a direction, they have a goal that they can reach. A well-conducted performance review answers those questions clearly, professionally, and consistently. For a supervisor, and you as a supervisor on the call or a manager, effective performance reviews reduce conflict, they reduce grievances, and they reduce any surprises employees may have. They also will support your HUD and NAHASDA compliance through clear documentation. Again, HUD and NAHASDA have requirements that you have to follow, and it would be great if you can use the performance review to educate and teach your employees so they understand and they have a clear understanding and they have clear documentation of what those expectations are. They protect you legally and ethically. And as a position you're in as a coach and a leader, you're not just to enforce policies, right? It gives you that opportunity to be a mentor to them, to be a coach, not just to tell them when they're doing something wrong, not to tell them, hey, you got to sign this because we got to get it in by the end of the day. It gives them the opportunity to see you as their boss, to show that you really do care about them and you want them to be successful. You want them to learn from you so they can be your replacement when you decide to retire or you decide to move up the ladder as well in your leadership journey. When reviews are done well, performance improves between not just a review, but doing formal evaluations. When you do them well, those issues are addressed early, expectations are a lot more clear, and compliance becomes proactive rather than reactive. You don't hear employees sitting there saying, well, I don't get paid the big bucks like the person in the office over there. I just do what I'm told. right? You want to create an environment through the performance review, and you have that ability to do that if you are effective in performance reviews for your employees. You could shift how that focus is in your environment. Today's session is not about filling out forms, as sometimes we all drink that Kool-Aid and we get into that habit sometimes just because of our everyday crisis that's going on. It's not about checking the box once a year or twice a year. And it's definitely not about the gotcha leadership. You do not want to use performance reviews as a gotcha mentality to your employees. It's about setting clear, defensible expectations tied to your HUD and NAHASDA and your tribe's requirements. It's about observing and documenting performance objectively. And it's about communicating confidence to your staff, fairness to your staff, and consistency. And using performance reviews and using a very detailed process to grow people, to protect the housing authority, and to strengthen that service that you provide to the community. Your jobs are not easy. And as leaders in the housing world, you deal with a lot of issues. Wouldn't it be great if we took the time and we slowed our path down and we took performance reviews just a little bit more seriously to work to our advantage instead of disadvantage? Because if you can solve the problem beforehand, it's less you have to deal with later on. Your employees become a well-rounded machine that are acting in a proactive manner than a reactive manner, and they're treating everybody at a level of high expectation and high level of service. Today, throughout the training, we're going to focus a little bit on how conducting performance reviews are predictable, they're professional, and they're productive, not just for you as the leader, but for your staff and for the community that you serve. So I encourage you today for the next hour just to lean in, reflect honestly wherever you're at across the country, and think about ways that how you can change for the better, how to conduct performance reviews today, and shaping the culture of your organization, of your housing authority, shaping compliance for your employees, and building that credibility as a leader and as a tribal housing authority starting tomorrow. With the foundation in place with this training, I know it's only 90 minutes, but you can pull some things out of it that moves the needle a little bit and helps your framework and builds your skills to turn the performance reviews into the strongest leadership advantage that you can have. Why do performance reviews matter? There's a couple of things. That it's not just for the organization. They matter for the organization to align individual efforts with company goals. When I go to training, I like to ask the question, tell me what your mission statement is. That's a very difficult challenge for some programs because it's never talked about, right? Performance reviews can bring that opportunity to the forefront. If people understand what's expected to them and what those missions are for them, they're going to be able to align their goals through this process. It identifies talent gaps and strengths in your organization. And it also supports the succession plan that your organization, if you have one, your organization will be aligned a lot better if they understand performance reviews matter to them. For an employee, it provides clarity on expectations, right? A lot of times through my career, I felt myself as I learned and I grew as a leader, I felt myself realizing that individuals sometimes do not understand what those expectations are. And they live in the environment of presenting themselves as if they do, because they don't want to tell their leader or me as their boss that they don't understand what their expectations are, because they may feel they're going to get in trouble, or they may feel they're going to be doing, or they're doing something wrong. So as an employee, a good performance review provides clarity and communication with those expectations. It offers recognitions of achievement, right? Again, it's not about just enforcing policy. It's letting people know that you appreciate them. It's letting people know the good work that they're doing. It's letting people know that you value the work that they come when they come to the job every day and they come to the community that they serve. that they're valued and they're making a difference in the community they serve. And then lastly, for the employees, it creates a pathway for growth. Our whole job as leaders is to teach people to replace us. And through performance reviews, those opportunities are there. They're ripe. They're right at the forefront, right at the edge, to allow for employees and you as their boss to create pathways for that employee to grow. Performance reviews has a negative consequence if we don't do it the right way. The cost of performance reviews costs your organization money. 47% of disengagement, percentage of employees who become disengaged after a poor performance review, right? That becomes a morale issue within your program. So if your performance reviews aren't done right, it has a consequence back into your program. So it may leave the office and you as a boss may feel, hey, I checked the box. I did the performance review. I'm turning it in. At the end of the day, in the community, when your employees come to work, are you one of the 47% that creates that disengagement? 33% of job searches, employees who began looking for new jobs following negative review experiences, right? Employees that come in, they have a negative experience when it comes to performance reviews. 33% of people that have those experiences start to look for new jobs. And then it leads into the employee cost. How much does it cost per employee? The average cost of replacing an employee who leaves after a demoralizing review. This is real world stuff that we can impact people's lives in a positive or negative way. And it's not just the employees' lives. It becomes a bigger picture for the organization. So it has a negative consequence if poor reviews are not done right. So as leaders, we have to manage this. We shouldn't be afraid of it. And I'm not saying employees are always right. Just as important as the information or material that you want to pass along to your employee, or that bad news that you want to potentially pass to your employees, how you pass that bad news along to them is just as important as the bad news. Just as equally as important, because if they take it the wrong way because of the process or however you're doing your performance reviews, it's going to have a negative consequence. If you rush through it, if your communication is poor, if you just say, here, read that and sign it. If you disagree with it, go ahead and you have an area there where you can sign and you can put your comments, right? If you don't have that communication and try to teach them, try to mentor them, try to coach them, it's going to set you up for failure. It's going to set you up, your program up for failure. And at the end of the day, it's going to cost your program and your tribe not only some funds because of the revolving door that you create in your organization, but it's going to create a morale issue. It's going to create a service issue. And the last thing you want to do is have your internal processes have a negative effect on the community you serve. So as we look at the traditional versus how we should do effective reviews in the 21st century, traditional approaches, you do it once a year. It's a one-way communication. You give them the document. Here you go. This is what I see. I need you to sign at the bottom when you're done reading it. You focus on all the mistakes that the person's made. You're judging as the manager, as the leader, and everything's standardized for everybody. It's just a one-stop shop. Paint everybody with the same brush. If one person is bad, everybody's bad, right? The traditional approach, one person gets in trouble, we create a policy that actually negative impacts everybody, right? That's the traditional way, the past, and sometimes that worked. But the reality is it has more damaging. And I could sit here and tell you the policies that I've been through my career, just like you can. If you sit and thought about it, you can think about some policies and you can attach a name to those policies. But we were all held to that standard just because one person didn't do the right thing. And so we're all affected by that negative review. So as we move into the 21st century, we want to change behavior. We want to change how we do things. And before we can change others' behavior, we need to change ourselves. And how do we do that? We want to look at doing performance reviews as an ongoing process, right? And it doesn't have to be an official ongoing process. It could be quarterly meets or biannual meets, right? You want to create an environment where that communication is steady. It's a two-way dialogue that is constant throughout that cycle of performance review. I would imagine that most of you go where performance reviews are due once a year. But what ends up happening is a lot of times they're done towards the end when they're due. Try to change that. If you're not doing that now, try to start doing it quarterly. And so that way you can write a book or you can paint a picture for the entire year to help that employee grow, help your program be successful. You want to focus on the growth, not just the growth of the employee. You want to focus on the growth of your program. You want to focus on the growth of the service that you're providing the community. And as a manager, you don't always want to be that heavy hand. We all sometimes fall into that trap. I can probably tell you every time that I fell into that trap throughout my career, my leadership career. But we also want to be a coach. We want to take that time to mentor, to be there, just to listen, right? Employees may not always be right, but they need to be able to have that opportunity to listen. And you have that opportunity through the performance review process to be a good coach for them so you can listen, or they can listen to what you're saying, and you can provide the opportunity for them to speak, and you listen, and you will learn a couple of things from that, I guarantee you. And you can personalize the approach. Not every employee is the same. Every employee is different. So if you have a span of control of 1 to 8, which is traditionally what I find is the average. Sometimes I run into people who have a span of control 1 of 20, 1 of 25. That's way too much, right? But depending on your span of control, you should be able to personalize the approach for your reviews. And so each person, when you do the reviews, it's all not the same. They all don't have the same problems. Not everybody is doing the rock star work, but not everybody is not meeting the mark either, right? Not everybody is the worst employee that you have, right? So you got to look at everybody for who they are, what they stand on, what they bring to the environment that you're in. Legal considerations, you want to look at how you're documenting, how you're writing it, right? Are you writing something that you have proof on, that you've personally experienced, that's fact-based? And that's what you're talking about, all those performance discussions and all those incidences that you've either witnessed or you have documentation on, right? Good and bad. And when I say incidents, there's good things a lot of our employees do every day. And we may not see it because of the crisis that we are in as leaders. And there's no doubt as a leader, no matter what profession you're in, you have those moments of crisis. And sometimes that crisis takes us away from seeing how good our employees are doing. We want to make sure we can maximize that opportunity to see those great things that they're doing so we can document it in the performance reviews. We want to be consistent. We want to create the same standard and process to all the employees. Now, don't get me wrong. I mentioned earlier about each person is different. Each person is different on how they're meeting expectations, but the standards should all be the same. And how we go through the process should all be the same. But you don't want to be a robot. You don't want to be a robot. You don't want to just sit and say, well, I told them this. I'm telling you that. Everybody is different, but you have one standard. And if everybody knows that standard, they're going to meet that expectation. And if they're not, that's when you're going to build them up. Privacy is so important. You want to conduct the performance review in a private location, and you want to maintain that confidentiality and the discussions, right? You want to do that for the sanctity of your program, you as a leader, and also as them as the employee. You know, it's important that somebody's professional growth, regardless of what good they're doing or bad they're doing, that it's protected, right? Always praise in public, And if you have to penalize or punish, you punish in private. So when we look at the performance review cycle, I'm going to spend a couple minutes on this slide. I think this is very important, right? So when we look at the performance review cycle, it goes from planning, where we want to set expectations and goals with our employees. We want to monitor them by observing their performance and documenting the achievements that they're doing. We want to provide them feedback, right? Regular feedback that comes to them in a timely manner, right? If they did something 6 months ago and you're telling them 6 months later they did a great job, that means nothing to them, right? You want to make sure that you're providing that feedback so they recognize you as the boss, that you're seeing that good work that they're doing. You want to evaluate them. You want to conduct formal reviews against the established standard. Again, create that standard. My recommendation is you do it quarterly. You bring them in, and it doesn't have to be these long drawn out sessions. Give them a half hour, sit down and tell them what you're seeing in that quarter, and you document it down. They don't have to sign the official performance review. You're just creating those steps. So once you get to that last quarter, you already have 3/4 of the performance review done. And then you finish the fourth quarter, you're evaluating them, and you provide them the opportunity of the big picture. And while you're doing that review cycle is you're developing them for any new goals, you're developing them for any new plans that your program may have. I can tell you one thing, housing changes daily or weekly or monthly. There's a lot of change going on. And one thing we all know is people resist change because it's uncomfortable. And if it's uncomfortable, it's going to create anxiety for them. It's going to put them in a position where they're going to feel nervous. They may not want to step out of their comfort zone. Create the environment for development. I want you to take a look at this cycle for a second. Planning, monitoring, feedback, evaluation. And if you can and you have time, in the public chat, what role do you find is the most challenging out of planning, monitoring, feedback, evaluating, and developing? If you'd like to share that, put it in the chat so we can see kind of what you're experiencing, because this cycle is what we all deal with. And sometimes people are really good at planning, but they're terrible at executing. And so planning is good, monitoring is good, but when they go give feedback, it's a disaster, right? So sometimes we have these issues that we need to improve on. And you can take these 5 areas, and if you're honest with yourself and really evaluate yourself, this will help you on your path to creating and conducting effective performance reviews. We want to set performance standards. We want to identify those key responsibilities that our job descriptions identify. One of the things that I always challenge people to do is when you're doing those performance reviews every year, sit down with the job description and refresh it with the employees. And sometimes you have to refresh the job description and change it because people's jobs and those expectations change. And through, as Rachel indicated, monitoring, that's a perfect opportunity when you're monitoring somebody's behavior out there. Are you comparing it to what their job description is? Does their job description match what their expectations are, what their responsibilities are? And I can tell you the training that I've done over the last 1.5 years when it comes to job analysis, job descriptions, and performance reviews, a lot of organizations miss the step of changing or updating or even reviewing their job description. So today I challenge all of you, if you don't have a job description, write one. Let your employees be part of that process. They're the ones that are out there doing the job. They're the ones that are out there that are doing the job, and while it's changing, they're modifying how they do the job, right? Provide them that opportunity to allow them to be part of the success of the organization. And if you can give them during your performance review, you can give them that job description and ask them, listen, is this something that still meets the standard that you're doing every day over the last year for our program? Is there anything in this job description that we have to change, that we have to improve, that we have to modify? Because I'm a big believer, if people understand the rules of the field, if they understand what those expectations are, then they're going to provide a better and a higher level of service to your organization. And at the end of the day, if every one of your employees has that mentality and has that drive because they feel welcome, they feel part of the solution, then your community is going to get the highest level of service. And the opposite of that, if you don't do that, then your community is going to get average or mediocre service. So provide that opportunity, use the job descriptions as you navigate effective performance reviews. You want to define the measurable criteria. Create specific metrics and indicators of what your success looks like in your community. And then you want to discuss gain agreements, right? Sometimes you ask the employees, where do you want to see them? Where do they want to see themselves by the next quarter? By the next 6 months, where do you want to be in our organization, right? Have them write that down for you. Have them write their own succession plan and then provide that succession plan and what they're going to do to create that employee agreement. So both of you understand, as the leader and the employee, you both understand where you're going and how you're traveling and how they're going to get there. And more importantly, it gives you the opportunity as the leader to support them, to support your employees. And again, I use the term crisis because sometimes we get into this mode of, we come in and we have an agenda that we want to do today and our day just gets taken away from us, right? And I call it our day's been hijacked because we're doing everything other than what we planned. We have to try and navigate that because when we don't, performance is what gets lax. Performance reviews gets impacted negatively. So we want to provide our employees that opportunity to have input in their success, have input in what they do daily, and by creating agreements on what they're going to do so they understand what those expectations are, it provides you that opportunity. When you identify you're in the crisis, you can slow down and you can go back to those agreements. And I will tell you, you will be rewarded by what you see for your employees. Because I'm a big believer employees always want to do the right thing. And there's sometimes you have an employee that doesn't do the right thing, but most people want to do the right thing. And if they know what they're supposed to do and they know what those expectations are, I'm a big believer that they will be successful, your program will be successful, and your community will get that best service that you can provide from a tribal housing standpoint. When we look at goals and goal setting, use the SMART goal setting pyramid, right? You want to be specific. You want to be clear. You want to create realistic, concrete objectives for them, right? And it's not just the personal goals as we navigate this. It's the personal goals that must align with the organizational goals. And then the bigger goals is the tribe or the bigger hierarchy that you have. So you have, for example, 3 sets of goals that have to align with each other. So when we look at the SMART theory, we need to make sure that the goals from a personal standpoint for your tribal employee match the Tribal Housing Authority goals or are aligned with the Tribal Housing Authority goals. And then we need to ensure that the personal goals of the employee and the organizational goals of our employees are aligned. We have to make sure the tribal goals and the community goals are aligned. So we want to make sure that you have a system in place so your employees can focus on their personal goals. They can focus on their the professional goals when it comes to the program, and then the overall tribal goals. And by using the SMART goal theory settings, you can allow them to be specific. You want to make sure they're measurable. You want to make sure that they can reach them, right? You don't want unrealistic goals, especially within the year, right? You want them to get the win. You want them to see that they are capable of reaching that goal. You want them to be relevant. You want them to be relevant. You want them to understand what those goals are and that they're relevant and how they're going to impact not only themselves, but your program and the tribe. And again, you want them time bound. You want them to be clear. You want them to have deadlines, and you want them to be able to understand by this point on this milestone that we're going to reach this, and we're going to get there together. We're going to get there not just by yourself. Your expectation isn't just you doing this. You're going to drive this, but as your leader, I'm going to support you, and we're going to make it there by this time. I'm just reading Ann's chat here. I have a good tool to allow my employees to prove. I can send something out. I know Brooke. I'll write something up that I'll send it to everybody on the call here today. Brooke, if you could just make a note, I'll write something up and send something out that could recommend to Ann's question here. All right, when we talk about goal alignment, again, and just really quick, I'll just repeat it. We want to look at the company goals, the overall organizational goals, the department goals, team specific, and then the individual goals. Very important that all three of these goals are aligned. And when they don't become aligned, or we start to see that one is going off the tracks, we got to bring them back. We got to make sure they're always aligned. Some examples for a poor goal would be improve customer service skills. I've heard that over my career. What does that really mean? Improve customer service skills, right? That's more opinionated. Some people complain on an individual, and then the employee's like, I didn't mistreat them, but the person in the community says that they did. So really, what is customer service skills? A SMART goal, being more specific. Achieve customer satisfaction rating from 4.5 to 5 or higher. 90% of service interactions for the quarter are measured by post-interaction surveys. We want to make sure we include everybody that is involved in the survey. So feedback is so important, not only internally, but externally. The key difference in this example is specific matrix, the time frame, measurement methods, and to make progress trackable. This is a prime example of how the poor goals, you don't want to put that on a performance review. A SMART goal, you can write your performance review just like this. It gives that expectation to the employee of exactly what's expected of them during that quarter or whatever that time frame is you're doing performance reviews. Ongoing performance reviews, I talked about it earlier. You want to be systematic, schedule regular observation periods rather than the random and monitoring at the end of the year. You want to focus on behavior. Document specific actions and results, not personality traits, right? You want to, sometimes when we're out and about and we're in the community and we watch our employees interact, we just think it's expected of them. We expect them to be like that. Well, sometimes that expectation, we need to reward that expectation. Even though we expect it from them, we need to reward them by just letting them know we observe that standard that they're carrying out every day is appreciated, it's valued, and we document that down. We're documenting that behavior down on how they're representing themselves, how they're representing the organization, how they're going into meetings and they're talking in meetings and they're communicating to other programs. Little things like that go a long way when it comes to performance review. We want to collect multiple samples. We want to gather that data. That's why every quarter you can gather enough information so at the end of each period, you can paint a picture on how well or not so well your employees are doing. And it gives you the opportunity to get everybody on track, to bring them to where they need to be and expand on those great things that they're doing. Multiple sources are very important. Peer feedback, talking to other employees without creating the divide within your organization, customer input, community input is very important. And then work samples, right? How they're writing memos, how they're writing policies, how they're writing reports, when they're doing housing inspections. Are their housing inspections thorough, or are they doing the bare minimum? Are they doing mediocre work, or are they doing exceptional work and reaching that standard? Documentation, again, is the best practice. The do documentations is be specifics. You want to make sure when you do performance reviews, you want to be specific on exactly what you observed. You don't want to be condescending on that when you're specific. So, how you write it is very important. The dates and the context, so they understand, hey, you know what? My boss saw me out there. I didn't see them. Wow, they saw that? I didn't know they were looking. That's something as a leader you can take away, because people will appreciate that you may not be saying it to them on that day, but on a performance review, you're letting them know how good they're doing, and they didn't even recognize it. The impacts of behavior, you want to describe that. Tell them how that good behavior and how that success of good behavior is making your organization successful, right? Conversations about the performance. You want to continue to have that discussion about conversations. Ask them for feedback, right? You want to have that conversation. A performance review should be a two-way street, not just the boss telling somebody, all right, this is what I think, this is what I saw, here, sign this. Have that conversation. Even allow them to do a performance review on themselves before you meet with them and you give them your performance review, and then see if they match. We created something in public safety at the Seminole Tribe where before the performance review is done, the employee has to evaluate themselves. They have to evaluate themselves. They have to put down what good they did, where they need to improve. They have to indicate what classes that they want to go to make their professional and growth better. Where do they see themselves? They have that strategic plan for themselves, the succession plan for an employee. So before they're even evaluated by their boss, they're evaluating themselves. They have to take the time to evaluate themselves. So you want to make sure that you have those conversations, and it provides you that opportunity to see what they're doing versus what you're observing, and do they match? And again, you want to progress towards the goals of the organization. You want to stay away from personal opinions, protected characteristics, any assumptions or motives why somebody did this or did that. Stay away from that. You do not want to compare employees, and you want to stay away from discussing any type of medical information on our performance review. You want to give feedback in a timely manner. I'm going to give an example of a personal opinion. Yeah, so one thing that comes across from a personal opinion would be, we had some individuals that, well, let me take it off of that. So if you have an individual that is that dresses a certain way, and they may be a large individual that is wears kind of big clothes and is the large individual, you may say, you need to clean yourself up. I don't like the way you look, and if you're giving them uniform shirts, part of that responsibility is on you. But if you're just kind of giving your personal view and you have nothing to base that on, you want to make sure you stay away from that. Now, if you have people complaining about how your employee looks sloppy, and you can articulate how they look sloppy, right? But if they're wearing their shirt that's untucked and everybody else wears their shirt untucked, it's hard to say, okay, you look sloppy because you're a bigger person and your shirt is untucked, if 4 other people wear their shirt untucked. So there's a lot of personal opinions that we throw into performance reviews. We want to stay away from that unless we have that factual basis to support what we have. So personal opinions, sometimes as bosses, we think what we think is not personal, and the reality is we don't have the factual basis. So we want to be careful with that. We want to give feedback in a timely manner. We want to be specific. We want to be balanced. It's important to provide the balance from what they're doing good and what they're doing not so good, right? So sometimes we just want to tell people what they're doing wrong, right? The reality is that maybe they don't know that what they're doing is wrong. So we need to phrase it in a manner to where we could say to them, listen, I appreciate what you did the other day when you were out there doing the inspection over at Bob's house. But what I observed, I think there's a better way that we can do that, and how we can do that is when we first approach somebody, we can introduce ourselves, right? So you've taken it away from pointing the finger at somebody and you've incorporated the word we, right? So you're not putting it in a position where it's a negative. You're turning it into a positive, saying we can do this. And so that way someone's not personalizing it themselves, where they're taking it as you're picking on them. So you want to balance that, the strength. You want to balance that communication for that improvement. And then, of course, action-oriented, focus on the future improvements rather than the past. We tend to, I think, as humans, something that irritates us or causes us anxiety or adversity, we hang on to that sometimes, and we have to learn, and we always have to tell ourselves as leaders that that's the past. So once you dealt with an issue, unless the person continues to do it, try to teach yourself to forget it. Don't talk about what they did in the past unless they improved it. If they improved it, then you want to say, listen, you know what? I'm impressed with what you've done over the last 6 months. 6 months ago, we had this discussion and you really took it upon yourself to make the environment better. You've changed how you're conducting business, and you're a value to this organization because how you're handling the situation now is really representing our organization at the highest level. So you want to be able to talk about the past only when you can provide that positive reinforcement when that employee changed. Feedback formula, describe the behavior. When you missed the deadline for the quarterly report, you want to describe the behavior for them. This is an example. You want to explain the impact. It delayed our department's financial planning. Suggestive alternatives in the future. Please communicate any delays in advance so we can adjust our timeline, right? And I know probably most of you in the suggested alternative may say, give me a call. Let me know. Tell me in advance and I'll help you out, whatever you need, right? So we want to make sure we continue that feedback formula. We want to describe the behavior. We want to explain the impact that it's had on the organization or in the community or on fellow employees. And then we want to suggest some alternatives that we can do to make it better in the future. I'm going to skip over that. That's in your packet. Active listening. It's so important for us as leaders to pay full attention and eliminate any distractions and focus completely on who you're speaking with. And I will tell you, these right here, these cell phones that we all have become an extra hindrance on how we do business. So if you have the opportunity to put your phone in a drawer while you're talking to somebody, don't look at your phone, don't look at your computer. Give your full attention to the person you're talking to. When you're doing your performance reviews, your employee is going to appreciate that because you're providing your full attention to them and you're allowing them to speak, and you're all attention, and you're listening to them, and you're showing that you care about them, right? So you want to make sure that you eliminate any distractions. Paraphrasing, you want to restate what you've heard to confirm that you understand what they're saying, right? Sometimes by letting employees talk, they kind of bounce across the room a little bit because they're nervous. They may not know how to communicate what they're saying. They may be saying something that they think you may yell at them for if they say it the wrong way. So they're walking on eggshells. So sometimes by listening for a couple minutes before you give an answer, you want to paraphrase so you understand exactly what they're telling you. Through your process of performance reviews, allow some time so you're patient. Do not rush through any of the issues. Give that employee the time, and sometimes it's going to be silence because they're thinking of how to answer it. Maybe they're embarrassed. Maybe they have to recognize the fact that what you're pointing out to them is realistic, and they may be embarrassed or hurtful. So allow for some silence, allow for some thoughtful responses, and don't rush the process. And I find a lot of times people rush the performance review process. And again, like I indicated earlier, just as important as the information you're going to talk to your employees about, how you do it is just as important, right? So the material you're going to go over, how well they're doing, or those corrective actions that they need to take is important. But how you communicate, that time you're communicating with them, the environment that you're in is just as important. So if you don't have good communication, no matter what you tell them, it's going to be a bad environment. But if you communicate well and you're not rushing, they feel like you care about them, you're concerned about their professional growth, you're concerned about making them a better employee for you, you're supporting them, and you're giving them that time. A lot of people don't have the time with the boss because the boss is busy. We need to make time as boss, because if we can fix issues today and slow the crisis down, if we can fix issues today, tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, it's going to be better off for us. We're not going to have the issues that we're going to experience if we don't fix it today. Clarifying questions, again, you want to ask open-ended questions so you get a better, deeper understanding of exactly what mindset that your employee's at. So you can ask questions, but not yes or no questions. You want to make sure any questions you ask, phrase them in an open-ended process so you can get the employee to talk, so you understand where they're at. And it provides that opportunity for you to create a game plan for them, for their professional growth. It gives you the opportunity to see where they're at on their walk when it comes to what they're doing out in the community for your organization. Some powerful questions I put in here: self-assessments that you can ask them. How would you evaluate your performance on this project, right? You can change these questions around to fit into your environment. If you do not do that succession planning or that evaluation process that we instilled several years ago, if it's just you do the performance review and they don't have a self-assessment process, while you're sitting with them, you can ask them questions. You can phrase questions like this: what accomplishments are you most proud of? Let them talk about great things that they did. It gives them that opportunity to feel and share great things that they're doing, and it gives you the opportunity to acknowledge how valued and how good your employees are. Where do you see the opportunities for growth? That's another great open-ended question. It's powerful, and it allows the employee to provide input into your organization. They may not have all the answers. They may have a bad answer when it comes to that, but you're allowing them to speak. You're giving them the opportunity to talk about where they're at. Every employee is at different levels, right? Some people are at the ceilings, and you have rock stars that, you really have to deal with. They have it down. They continue to reach those expectations, and they burst through the ceiling because they're rock stars and they're really, great employees. Then you have other employees that are mediocre, right? You have employees that are not so mediocre, right? So you have about 10% employees that are not so mediocre. You have about 10% that are rock stars. That other 80% is really the individuals that you're going to spend a lot of time with, and these self-assessments are very successful, because that's when you take that 80% and you start moving them to the rock star process. That other 10% that's down at the bottom, you never forget them. Always try and raise them up. But if you want to look at percentage-wise with your employee base, it's usually 10% on an average from a rock star standpoint, high-level employee, high achiever, to 80% in the middle that, they check all the boxes, they do what's expected. You really have any issues from them, and then you have 10% that are your employees that really need more work, or your problem employees that you're always spending a lot more time on. Future focused: what skills would you like to develop? These are questions, again, you can ask them for future focus, for personal growth? How can I better support your success? And what are your career aspirations, right? I was at a training a couple of months ago, and there was a individual who was doing some training before me, and the information had to do with housing issues and the federal government issues. And on a break, one of the individuals that was attending the course, he made the comment to me, I'm just I'm at this level, and this is my job, and this stuff that they're talking about really doesn't apply to me. And it was all housing, the NAHASDA issues. And so I asked him the question. I said, do you want to be a boss one day? And he was like, well, yeah, probably in the next 5 or 6 years. He goes, I think I want to be a boss and maybe one day, run housing, And so my comment to him is, listen, what a better time right now to where you don't have the responsibility for these requirements, but you can sit in a room and you can learn these requirements without the stress, without the pressure, without any of the anxiety. And you can try to understand all these components that 6 years from now, when you become that boss, you're going to need to know. 10 years from now, when you become that housing director, you're going to need to be proficient in this information. And it kind of put a light bulb off in his head. He thought to himself, wow, I never looked at it that way. I was just really, looked at it and being concerned about today. So it gave me the opportunity from a stranger standpoint to sit and give him a career aspiration just based on a simple question of what his goals were or where he saw himself from a career path. So you have that opportunity to really spark that in the employees and give them that opportunity for professional growth. Again, effective performance appraisals are not just negative. The negative piece you have to identify, and sometimes you have to put that down. But the reality is you want to try and use this as a stepping stone to show growth, to show that performance, and to show that advancement and enhancement within your organization from a individual standpoint and a program standpoint. Handling difficult conversations. No one likes doing this. This is something that we all dread at times, but the more we do it, the more proficient we get at it. We want to prepare thoroughly when we have to have these difficult conversations. Sometimes we get into mental lock, and we're because we're afraid of it, right? We want to gather the specifics. We want to take the emotion out of it. We want to gather specifics. We want to gather the examples and the documentation. We want to focus on the behavior, discuss the actions rather than the character or the personality, discuss the actions of the individual. We want to listen. We want to try to understand what the employee did, why they did what they did, right? We want to collaborate on solutions. We want to work together to develop employee improvement plans, right? Let me touch a little bit about listening with empathy. I had an individual throughout my career. I was a supervisor, and he did a good thing. He was doing an investigation, and he instead of doing his job further when it comes to either arresting or not arresting an individual, he decided to talk a little too much. And he decided to talk a little too much, and he put himself in a position where he said some things that were outside of the boundaries of policy. Right. And when I spoke to him after the incident was over, there was a complaint made. And when I spoke to him, I asked him, listen, you were doing good. What happened here? And he's just like, well, he made some comments to me. He just got under my skin. Right. So I gave him the opportunity to give me the story, but he also gave me the reasoning why he did what he did, and it helped me identify that, okay, this guy has to go to retraining. We may have to identify some other training that he has to go to because he's allowing people to get under his skin. These words that were said by the individual really got to him in a negative way. I talked to him about, was he going through anything that day? Did he have any personal issues that day? And his mood was good. He didn't have any personal problems. He didn't have any issues from home. This guy just made some comments that got under his skin. So we had to send him to retraining, but it gave me the opportunity to listen to him. I didn't agree with what he said, but it gave me the opportunity to listen to him to try to understand why he said it, what triggered him, and then I was able to set a game plan for him so his behavior changed. And I will tell you, he's doing great. He's still working. He's impacting actually other people's lives because of not just this incident, because he grew as a person, and he hasn't had any of those complaints moving forward like that, because it kind of triggered him that that's not a complaint he ever wants to have again. He doesn't want to have those type of things attached to him. But by me listening to him and giving him that opportunity to share his perspective, right? He recognized himself that he was wrong, and then it made it easier for me going through that, made it easier for me to recommend some different trainings and send him some to different retrainings that he had to go to. Employee emotional intelligence is so important. One of the things that I think we all can learn from every day is emotional intelligence. That's something that we have to stay on top of, and we always have to polish, right? So we want to be self-aware when we do performance reviews. We want to recognize our own emotions, right? You want to recognize if you have any biases when you're doing your performance reviews. Self-regulation, we want to manage reactions even when conversations become difficult. You know, I had to learn when I'm a 6'5" individual, and I had to learn that my size speaks for itself. And sometimes I didn't have to use my voice. So my size speaks for itself, how I carry myself with a command presence. So I had to learn that sometimes my body and the way I presented myself was more of a reaction than my words. So I had to self-regulate myself so I didn't have a response, or I didn't come across a certain way where they have a perception of me that wasn't necessarily true, but my body was presenting something that they were reading. So you want to self-regulate yourself. Social skills is very important. You want to communicate effectively to build trust and rapport. You know, you don't want to just come in, sit down in the room and say, all right, we're going to go over your performance review. Here it is. Read it. Let me know what you think. Start with small conversations. Build the rapport up. Let the employees know that you appreciate them. Let them share some things with them that they may not know. You know, give them that opportunity to maybe talk about their family, how their kids are doing. Get them relaxed, because you want it to be a growth session. You want it to be a learning session. There's always time to have those discipline sessions, but they should be one-offs. The performance review should always be the opportunity where you can sit down and you can grow together. So by communicating effectively and building that trust and rapport is so important. Empathy is so important. You want to show and understand employees and their perspectives, right? And even to the point where if you have to shed a tear with them, sometimes, you know, it gets emotional. Sometimes you learn things with your employees and it creates that opportunity where, you know, you may get emotional too. It may hit your heart a little bit, some of the things they may be going through, right? Give yourself that opportunity during that process to where you can show your empathy to employees. You can provide that foundation for them to show that you're human and that you have the capacity to recognize that they're human too, and this is just part of the process. And you're there to support them and to grow them, because that's what an effective performance review is evaluating their performance and making sure it's always improving to enhance and highlight the great organizations that you work for. Again, you want to avoid those biases. Recency bias is overemphasizing recent events rather than an entire view. You know, that's focusing on the recent events, and instead of looking at the whole quarter, you're just focused on one thing. You want to stay away from that. The halo effect, letting one positive trait influence all other evaluations, right? So this is where that 10% of rock stars, sometimes we get into this position where I never hear from Will. He's always out there. He's doing his job, you know, but the reality is I don't hear from Will. He's doing his job because I'm so busy. So I write this halo effect of performance review that he's doing great things until something breaks. And the next thing you know, everybody's sitting there saying, well, Will's been doing this for 10 months and nobody has seen it. So you want to make sure you don't get caught with the halo effect and start looking at those 10%ers. You may have those 10%ers at the top, those rock stars that are really rock stars, but nobody's perfect. There's always something we can improve on, and you as a boss want to make sure that you recognize that. Similarity biases, rating people similar to you more than favorable. That's where we hold our standards to everybody else's standards. And that's difficult because we want everybody to do what we do. And there's some bosses out there, and we've all kind of hit that probably through our plateau where we've went through our career where we're holding people to our standards because I'm working all these hours, I'm doing this. How come they can't do this? It may not be in their DNA to do that. You may just be a one-off to where your work ethic and the way you were raised and the way you handle yourself is a higher level than somebody else. That doesn't mean that somebody else is in a negative area. That just means that they're at their ceiling. You may be at yours. So you don't want to evaluate them based on what you're seeing through your glass. Try to see where they're at and then pull them up to where you're at, and you can use the performance review to do that. Central tendency is rating everyone in the middle to avoid extremes. This is the one where if you have an evaluation system that is based and this is something that, again, I go back to my training clauses. I don't want to put anything as contradicting your policy, but if your evaluations are based on equity adjustments or pay raises, this is where people just, all right, we want everybody to get the 3% raise, so everybody gets a 5 because the 5 is going to get a 3% raise. That happens a lot in environments because you don't want anybody to get anything less than a 3% raise. So when we do our evaluations, everybody gets the same thing. Everybody's in the middle. We don't have any rock stars. We don't have anybody really bad because everybody's going to get the 3% raise across the board. So everybody gets 5. So that's the damaging piece when it comes to the circumstances where the evaluations are based on equity adjustments or pay raises. We have to make sure if that's the case that we don't have the central tendency, because that can create the central tendency mentality where performance reviews aren't based on reality. It's more based on we want to make sure our employees get raises because we like our employees. We don't want to be the bad guy, so everybody gets the number 5 rating, so they get the 3% raise. Psychological safety. This is very important. Employees want to feel safe. They want to feel that they have people that support them. They want to be able to speak their mind, again, respectfully, right? And they want to be able to do this without having that fear of consequence. And that's what the definition of psychological safety is. So you want to create safety in your review. You want to focus on improvement, not punishment. You want to welcome employee. You want to welcome their input. You want to acknowledge your own mistakes. Nothing wrong with saying that that you've made the error in the past before, or what you've learned from issues that you've went through. Nothing wrong with that at all. And you want to respond constructively to any challenges that the person may be having. So you want to look at the psychological safety. This is the definition I provided to you for that. These are some areas that can help you provide an opportunity for psychological safety. Employees will respond better to you if they feel safe in the environment to where they can take risk, they can speak candidly without the fear of retribution or the fear of any negative consequences. Preparing for the review. Again, this is just an example depending on how you do your review. I would try to put in 2 weeks before the review. I would sit down, I would schedule the meeting, notify the employee. We would provide them the self-assessment. The week before, I would review the documentations of what I went through and what I was going to talk to the employee about. I'd prepare any specific examples, bring them together. I'd bring out their tickler file to see what issues that I may have had in that quarter. And then the day before, I'd review the meeting structure, how it's going to go. I'd prepare the environment to minimize any interruptions. And I would make sure that during that time that I would play it all through so I would have a successful meeting with them, right? Giving them that opportunity for me to be successful for them, right? This is a template that you can use, and you have to force yourself to do this because you have a lot of things going on. you have issues that are happening. But if you give yourself some time and schedule, even if you have to schedule it, if you're that type of person that has to use your Outlook, put this on your calendar. Give yourself some time to go over how you're going to do the performance review, how you want it to run, and identify those areas that may be a hard discussion for you, so you can play them out how you want them to go, and just take notes down so you're prepared. It's all about being prepared. When you review meeting structure, you want to look at an opening remark. Again, you want to build that rapport, set that positive tone. It's not a discipline session. It's all about growth. It's all about helping the employee. It's all about helping the organization and the overall tribe and the community. Again, if the person comes in and says, listen, we got to do reviews, they need them by HR called and they need them by Friday. So here, I need you to sign this. Tell me what you think, but just, I need you to sign it, and we go from there. You're going to lose the employees, right? So you want to make sure that you sit down, give them the opportunity to speak. Again, forecasting that if you deal with the issue today and you look at improving today, a month from now, it's going to be a better environment. You're going to deal with less issues. You want to start with employee input by asking them simply, listen, after you get done doing the rapport and building them up, you want to ask them, listen, tell me what you think. Describe to me how your work product was over the last quarter, right? Give them the opportunity to speak. You want to look at the performance review, discuss their achievements, areas that need development, areas that you see they may be lacking in, goal setting, any courses they may need to go to, or where you want to see them in the future. Let them know what your expectations are. Listen, I want you one day sitting in my seat, but before you sit here, there are certain things we need to get you. We need to train you up. We need to send you to courses. We need you to commit to this, right? So you want goal setting. And then again, summary, you sit down, you go over exactly what the game plan is, the action items, and you express that confidence that you have in them. Keep open conversations. You want to be you want to have effective openers. Again, like we talked about, I went over that. Key elements, set a positive tone. You want to clarify purpose and the agenda, establish that two-way communication, and then review the meeting time frame. Nothing wrong with saying, listen, in the next hour, we're going to sit in here, no interruptions. We want to sit and have a good meeting. We want this to be successful because you're a valued employee for us, and I want to take the time for you to grow because you're a great impact to our organization. Let them know how you feel about them. You want to discuss performance data. Again, be specific, balance the feedback, link to the standards, focus on the impact within your organization, address any performance gaps, identify the gap, clearly articulate the difference between what's expected and what's actually happening, explore the causes, discuss those potential reasons without assuming or blaming. Ask them, hey, why do you think you're doing this? What's causing you to do this? Is there something that's bothering you? Is there something in the environment that's bothering you? Ask them those open-ended questions. Focus on the solution and establish that support. Again, training, coaching, mentoring, even follow-up meetings. Development planning, again, maybe it's the 70-20-10 model, effective development, which typically includes 70% on-the-job experiences, 20% mentoring and feedback, and 10% formal training. Those are things that you can do. You can develop some plans for your employees that will assist you as you progress through the effective performance appraisers. Career pathing is so important. This is part of the career pathing. And if they know what their expectations are, they know what their job descriptions are, and they know where they want to go in the future, career pathing is so important. You can discuss long-term career goals. You can determine the skills and experiences needed for their advancement. You can present options to them, and then you can plan first steps. You can agree on that, what they need to do and where they need to go and how they need to get there. And you're doing it together as a team. Closing review, again, summarize the key points, confirm any understandings that there may be, express the confidence, thank them for who they are and what they bring to the organization. And the reason why I say that is because you or somebody else, your predecessor, chose them to work in your organization. They came to your organization looking for a job. Somebody gave them the opportunity for that job. Now it's our job as leaders to build them up and make them successful in our organization. Or if they're not going to be successful, then we just have to make a change and get them out of our organization and find somebody who's going to be successful. Again, follow up. You want to do a setup follow up, check in. Maybe you can sit down and say, hey, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to come find you, see where you're at. In the meantime, you need anything, give me a shout, email me, call me, whatever that issue is, right? Post-review documentation, what to document, performance assessments, key discussion points, what you agreed upon, development plans, employee comments, best practices, complete within 48 hours, be factual and specific, have employee review and sign it, store securely, follow organizational protocols. The one thing I don't have on here, which I would add, is that when they leave your office the next day, send them a 2-line email letting them know, hey, thanks for the time yesterday. I really enjoyed our discussion. I look forward to working together with you to make us all successful in our housing authority. Again, follow up. You can do a 1-week follow-up, a month follow-up, a quarterly follow-up, and ongoing regular feedback. Frequency of reviews. There's technology out there that you can use to help through this process. A lot of people have internal mechanisms or software that are used, but there is performance review technology out there that you can use that is very good. If you want to my opinion on any of it, you can email me separately, and I'll share some of my personal experience that I have with them. Remote performance reviews. I'm not a big fan of doing performance reviews over Zoom, but I know in some situations it has to be done that way. So here's best practices. Allow extra time for connection. Make sure there's no disturbances. You're going to have to watch the body language and their eyes to see if they're really paying attention to you. Again, I'm not a big fan of this, but I understand this is 2025 and COVID kind of pushed a lot of organizations to do Zooms. But when you do performance reviews, that personal touch is really what the success is. It's all about networking. Legal compliance, we went over that. You want to make sure you stay away from any discriminatory issues. Make sure if, depending on your tribe and how your circumstances are, the American Disabilities Act, the Family Medical Leave Act, and labor relations, you want to make sure you have a good understanding of that. And again, trends of performance management. Real-time input is very important. You have AI that's out there now. Don't get locked into AI of using AI to write all your performance reviews. AI can be used as a tool, however your organization uses it, but don't get locked into using it as really you speaking. Do your performance reviews. Let your employees know that you are the one that's developing the performance review, and that all the unique material in it is coming from you, from your observation, from your heart, from your thought, and you can show them you care about them, right? Peer recognition. That's important. Talk to their peers without creating that divide. And then skill-based evaluations is another trend that you can look at from performance. Today, we talked about the regular process, clear standards, effective communication, development focus, and legal compliance. These are references that I did the presentation on today. My information is here. Here's my email. I'll put it into the chat. What I would tell you, if you have any questions, please email me or call me. My cell phone number is there. I'm here for you if you have anything. We all work together to be successful. And I don't know everything, but I have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of connections that may be able to help you on your path. So if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me. And in closing, what I would say is I'm very honored to present this to you today. I thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. However you celebrate the Christmas and New Year's holiday, I wish you nothing but blessings and health and happiness to you and your employees. Your job is very difficult. Your job is very challenging at times, But let me tell you something. For somebody who's been in public safety, travels the country, and has worked with the Seminole Tribes Housing Authority, and now having the opportunity to work with housing authorities around the country, you are valued and you are needed. And know that sometimes during those hard times when you're feeling that pinch or you start to feel overwhelmed, just take a breath and know that what you are doing is very meaningful and it's needed and you're appreciated. And don't let anybody else tell you any different. Always do what's right. You're going to make mistakes throughout your career, like I do every day. I made mistakes today and I'm going to make mistakes tomorrow. But I would share with you is when you're doing performance reviews, always have at the forefront that it's about your employees, it's about your program, it's about the community you serve, it's about your tribe, and it's all together making success. So if you could take your performance reviews and always make them positive and not fake positive, real positive, you will definitely build a core team that is providing that high level of service to your community. So thank you very much. I wish you nothing but success. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you and your family. And Brooke, I will turn the presentation over to you, and I'm 5 minutes over.
No worries at all, Will. Thank you so much. Another great presentation on the books. Folks, I have put the link to the webinar feedback survey for you in the chat. Just takes about 2 to 3 minutes. It is anonymous. Your name and email aren't connected to it. Just lets us know at the Native Learning Center what is working well and what we can improve upon to do even better webinars in the future. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. That's going to be this upcoming Thursday in a couple days. This will be on Fair Housing 101 with Crystal Banksman, who is the training coordinator for Travoy. You can access this as well as our other recorded webinars on our YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist called the Cathedra Webinar Archive. It goes back about 2 years. YouTube is a free resource, so I encourage you to look through the archives and see all the different recordings that we have. Feel free to also check out our other upcoming events. We post about them on our various social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And if you are a podcast fan, we have an in-house producer podcast, the Hope of Being a Native American podcast. You can listen to that on our YouTube channel or anywhere you listen to your podcasts as well. But otherwise, that is all we have for you today, folks. Thank you again, Will, for another incredible presentation in the leadership series. And thank you, folks, for tuning in and joining us for the webinar. On behalf of the Native Learning Center, happy holidays. I hope everybody has a great couple of weeks celebrating with their families and friends and loved ones. There won't be any webinars next week. We're all taking some time to our families as well. All right, folks, I'm going to put that feedback survey link one more time just for easy access. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording.